Well, I'll tell you what, this happened rather quietly on Saturday against the Cleveland Browns. Roquan Smith became the youngest player in NFL history to reach the 1,000 career tackle milestone. Felt like that was kind of swept under the rug. That's a pretty big deal for Rowe. Clearly, some of the adjustments that they've made, including demoting Trenton Simpson, have gone in his favor. Doesn't mean that Trenton, a second-year player out of Clemson, first-year starter, doesn't have a bright future ahead of him, but clearly using a combination of Chris Board, Malik Harrison at times has settled things down and allowed Roquan to play more freely. And of course, on the back end, it goes without saying, Kyle Hamilton and Ardarius Washington have been maybe the biggest piece of this puzzle since week 10, week 11, and the back end of this defense, and really a trickle-down effect, which became contagious from level 3, 2, 1 down to 1. That's all gone into it as well. Roquan talked about what's coming up this weekend, and that is a super wild card matchup it will be a rematch. It's either going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Los Angeles Chargers, both of whom, of course, have already matched up with the Ravens this year. Here's Agent Zero, courtesy of Bowie TV.
Lost confidence one bit, despite what people say. At the end of the day, it's all about each and every guy in this locker room, and we believe in each other before anybody else believes in us. So that's our mindset, continuing to just stack, go out, prove ourselves to ourselves at the end of the day, and it's just going to show who we are, the more games we play. And it's going to get started next week. Whoever on the schedule, you got to come to the bank and you got to see about it.
How big is that to have playoff football years?
Oh, you love playoff games at home. It's definitely an advantage for the defense, in my perspective. That there's a lot of things the offense have to do with the crowd noise and the things of that nature. So it's something that doesn't go unnoticed, and I love being able to play at home, give me a lot of little tips and feeds.
Agent Zero, again, courtesy of Bowie TV, got his swagger back this year. Hasn't had a lot of those sound bites that have went viral, courtesy of, us last year, right? When he would come on the Vault weekly, and man, he had his inner Ray Lewis going last year on our show and just about every single media session that he partook in. But this year, I wonder if it's been a concerted effort to kind of keep it a little bit more business-like, or maybe, just maybe, because it was a historic season last year, he was sort of loving every part of how high-flying that defense was on all three levels. And obviously this year has been a little bit more of a struggle, but this is a team, defensively-wise, that's rounding into form and peaking at the right time. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity prior to things getting going this week and all the lead up that will go into Super Wild Card Weekend with revisiting the Marcus Williams conversation, because I had a tremendous interview with Jimmy Smith. I had an opportunity to sit down with him. His son, Jimmy Jr., was running around the Be More Around Town pregame show tailgate, and maybe some of you caught this live. But I wanted to pick it apart because I honestly didn't even know this interview was scheduled. It was very spontaneous. Jimmy was there. He's getting ready to move back to Maryland, which he shared with us, which is awesome. And this full conversation can be found, by the way, in my archive section, the best of Bobby Baltimore clips. But what I've done is I've grabbed two different clips for you that I think we can kind of have a conversation surrounding the secondary. And of course, when Marcus Williams was benched earlier this season as the third highest cap hit on this team, right? The former $70 million man and a big free agency splash in 2022. It kind of sent a shockwave, I'm sure, not only throughout that building, but throughout much of the fan base. And our eyes told us one thing, but it's different to hear it from a player's perspective. And I thought Jimmy did a really good job of breaking down how this came to be. How did the demise of Marcus Williams come to be in Baltimore this year? Jimmy, courtesy of yesterday's interview at the Be More Around Town tailgate.
Say right now, obviously it's not to Marcus as he is a sorry player or something like that. I didn't know who he was before, and when they brought him in, I obviously did my studying afterwards. Like, he's an interception guy. He's the interception guy, so I'm thinking that's what he does. And then when he first got here, he got a lot of interceptions really quickly, and then when he got his shoulder hurt, the tackling started coming up, and then the tackling kind of came into this year. And one thing I can tell you, like I said, about safeties and John Harbaugh, if you're not a tackling safety, I don't care who you are. I watched him get on Eric Weddle. I watched him get on Ed Reed. I watched him get on every safety that's ever played for the Ravens, as long as I've been there. So when I see the bad angles and I see, I knew immediately like Harbaugh is dying inside because he loves secondary. That's his thing. He loves special teams is his thing, but every day he talks to the secondary because he loves it. So watching what was going on was more of a, I bought this. I bought this, so I have to spend my money on this. Yeah. I have to use this person, but I don't know if that person necessarily fit our style of defense. I'm not saying he's a bad player, none of that, because obviously he got $70 million. That's not an easy feat to do. So he showed what he needed to show to get there. But when it came down to actually playing our defense, which our safeties are rotational, they're not. You're just not a strong safety. You're just not a free safety. We don't play that here. So you got to be strong safety sometime, and you got to be free. And I think that was what I see as a football player. I see like, oh, he's a true free safety. And by true free safety, I mean he wants to be deep the whole time and just cover deep. When he has to start going down and covering and starting, I didn't see the want to hit people. I didn't see the intent to like cover deep. Like it just, for me, it was like sloppy play.
But what's so interesting is that last year, speaking of want and desire, he played through that shoulder. So why, or did he?
Oh, so that's what I just said. Yes, I played through a shoulder injury, but I'm not a tackler anyway. I didn't want to tackle him, no way. That sounds bad to say. But when you watch tape and you're watching this year, like I'm a fan now. I get to sit at home and watch the game, and I watch some of the angles he takes, like the one that Jamar Chase has only killed one team in the league.
And he did it twice this year.
He does it every year. No, he does it every year.
Every year, yeah.
I love Marlon to death. That's my brother. We know that is his toughest matchup.
Part of my conversation with Super Bowl champion and former first-round cornerback Jimmy Smith at yesterday's pregame show tailgate, the Be More Around Town lot, which is located at 801 West Austin on the Fed side of M&T Bank Stadium. I would encourage you to join me for next weekend's show. Would love to see you guys out there. But some interesting comments from Jimmy indeed here. Perhaps getting after Marcus Williams' lack of positional flexibility, which certainly may have contributed to his demise in Baltimore this season. His future is certainly uncertain. Maybe the only thing that's a certainty is that his NFL future will not be in Baltimore coming up next year. I would be stunned, barring something unforeseen. But the quote that stood out to me from Jimmy on Marcus, I didn't see the want. I didn't see the want to hit people. I didn't see the intent to cover deep. For me, it was sloppy play. And another thing that Jimmy mentioned early in the interview as well is that part of the reason why Marcus was brought in and earned that contract from Baltimore was his playmaking ability, was the splash interceptions that he had a knack for. And I thought in year one, you saw a lot of those. You saw the kind of player that Eric DeCosta and company were willing to invest in. But due to injury, due to perhaps, again, this lack of acceptance for what John Harbaugh and his defensive staff expects from their safeties, perhaps that was all contributing factors that sent this thing south in a spiral quickly to the point where this guy has been a healthy scratch for 2 months. He's the third highest cap hit guy on this on this team. And certainly the Ravens probably wouldn't be playing Ardarius Washington otherwise. That was another thing that Jimmy mentioned in the conversation. Like the chance that Ardarius is getting right now and taking full advantage of it is a rarity. Ardarius is 5'8", $170 soaking wet. And yet he is playing a key role and has brought legitimate calmness on the back end alongside Kyle Hamilton. Jimmy was like, no other situation, no other team is he starting. And that's no disrespect to Ardarius. He's an undrafted rookie with the heart of a lion. He's been around the system and been around the program for many years now, dealt with his fair share of injuries. But when his number was called, unlike Deontay Johnson, he's risen to the occasion and become a key piece for Zach Orr's defense. And of course, a key piece to what's become a remarkable turnaround since week 10, week 11. As for Brandon Stephens, this is a contract year for Brandon, meaning he is set to hit free agency this offseason. And after a career year a season ago, Brandon has had a massive target on his back throughout pretty much all of this season. And I asked Jimmy point blank, give me your breakdown. You're watching this as a fan now in your retirement life. What's up with Brandon? And technically wise, why is it that sometimes from a ball skill standpoint, he loses vision? He lacks a certain level of ball awareness. He's always stride for stride. He's always attached to the hip. He's a smart player. But why is it that sometimes, oftentimes this year, he has lost sight of the football? Here's Jimmy.
Secondary, I think Stephens went through his Marcus Peters phase. Honestly, like somebody gets targeted, right? I'm not going to target him. I'm not going to target him. That person gets targeted. So sometimes it is the fact that you're not playing as good, or the fact that they just say, hey, you know what? We're just going to go at him. He doesn't have to have confidence. So I think Brandon Stephens has probably showed the most of any DB we have. Wow, like what's relentless resilience, because he has been getting targeted. And when they won first round, they come after him. But the fact that we got Tre'Davious White and they kept Brandon starting, lets you know that like he's a guy that can keep working towards what he's going to. When the ball gets in the air, he finds that calmness and just makes the play, which he does sometimes. But that's what they target the most. The difference between Brandon Stephens is ball skills. It's not that he's not there. It's not that he's not fast enough. It's not that he won't tackle. He does all those things. But when that ball's in the air and that panic hits your heart at corner, it's a different feeling. The ball hits the air for him, panic settles in, I think, a little bit, and he doesn't just gently turn around, go up and grab it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's right there. Like, he turns around, the ball hits his elbow. Like, he's not there. It's just when teams are targeting like that, it's very hard to gain confidence because you're like, every game I'm getting 12 targets. Yeah. And they're getting like 8, right? And then you read one thing or somebody says one thing, you start to – your confidence goes down. As a cornerback, your confidence is probably, besides your athletic ability, which is number one, I would say your confidence is 1B. Like, you need to be just as confident as you are athletic to play corner. If he's a high draft pick, they give him another year because, okay,
it's a contract.
You know what I mean?
It's a contract year for him.
Exactly. So he had to battle something that, you know, a lot of corners have to, you go through this. You go through a part where people think, hey, he's vulnerable, right? And the thing is, once somebody does one thing to you as a corner, they're going to do it to you for the next 4 games, 5 games. If you can't stop it, they'll do it to you all season. So his thing is not being sticky in coverage. It's not doing it's literally having the calmness and the patience when that ball's in the air to locate it, right? Like once you get on a I'm getting beat, you start playing a little bit more tense, a little tight. And I felt like he went through a little bit of that. I think they brought Tre'Davious in. Tre'Davious had a couple good plays on some fades, right? And then Brandon, all of a sudden, you start seeing Brandon in the game. And I watch, obviously, them the most. I watched Brandon get even more close in tight coverage. Like, I don't agree with every PI that they call on Brandon. But he is the one that they target. Just like Marcus was the one that they targeted a few years ago when it was all of us. It's just, if you have laps in your game, your coverage, your game, they're going to come after you. So for him, it's like, oh, you're good. You're really good. But I'm always betting 50-50 that when I throw that ball, I don't know if you're going to turn around. And right now he's 50-50. I don't know if he will.
Yeah.
I don't know if he. So that I thought was a big improvement in the last 10 weeks because he's now been in the call. If it is the PI, I'm like, I don't know about that one. Before I'm like, oh my God, that's bad. Now I'm like, oh no, he's right there. Like I can see his growth.
Some great insight there from Jimmy Smith on Brandon Stevens. Here's part of what he had to say. Again, this full conversation can be found in the best of clips. Go back to the archive section on my YouTube channel. Quote, the ball hits the air for him. Panic settles in. I think a little bit, and he doesn't just gently turn around, go up and grab it. If you have lapses in your game, they're going to come after you. So for him, it's like, oh, you're good. You're really good. But I'm always betting 50-50 that when I throw that ball, I don't know if you're going to turn around. And right now, he's 50-50. 50-50, not going to exactly cut it in the postseason. 50-50 makes you a bit weary of what could be coming in the postseason. And I see some of you in the chat echoing that exact sentiment. Could this come back to bite them against elite playmaking offenses with elite playmaking playmakers? I don't know if the Jamar Chases of the world will make it. Cincinnati obviously has done all it can do and now needs a little bit of help from around the league in order to sneak its way in as the 7th seed. Regardless, there will be playmakers out there that will test this Ravens secondary. And going in the postseason, I don't know how you gauge level of worry, but right in that same vein, right in that same level, I'd put Brandon Stevens and Justin Tucker. Those are two areas that, sure, have absolutely improved down the stretch. But I'm not sure how confident I am in that they may not come back to bite the Ravens at some point over the course of the next few weeks. Speaking of confidence, this dude doesn't lack any of it. He sure plays, or at least he plays like he doesn't. Nate Wiggins, thinking of another former first rounder in Zay, who of course is dealing with a knee sprain. His status is unknown for Super Wildcard Weekend. But on 63 targets, Nate Wiggins completed his rookie season not allowing one touchdown. Of course, he hauled in his first career pick 6 just yesterday against Cleveland, jumping the route on Bailey Zappi. And how about the numbers? The 3rd lowest passer rating allowed, 51.8. The lowest catch rate allowed across the NFL, 43.6%. And as I mentioned, he gave up 0 touchdowns all year long. This is a player who had a few rookie moments this year, no question. A couple DPIs that were head scratchers. And he was picked on at times, but I think about the play of the year maybe for Nate. When he went toe-to-toe with CeeDee Lamb as Dallas was driving in that Week 3 game and came up with a big-time forced fumble. CeeDee Lamb's a top 5 wide receiver by most metrics. Nate playing in his 3rd career game, showing you a little bit about what his MO is at that time. And that certainly proved to just stack as he stacked game after game after game. Jimmy did mention during yesterday's conversation that he'll have to make a few business decisions with his body just because of how lean he is, a slender frame. But I trust the staff. I trust the Ravens staff to get this guy in the right mindset in the offseason and strength train. And we know they've made a ton of upgrades and adjustments over the years since letting Steve Saunders go. But Nate Wiggins, make no mistake, his future is really, really bright. And what a fun year it was to watch number 2 do what he does well. This was pretty fun last night as well. Kyle Van Noy hit the 12 sack mark, 12 and a half to be exact. And that triggered a $250,000 contractual incentive. He tweeted out a photo of his celebration last night. Love KVN. He gave away 4 tickets, by the way, to this game for fans. Literally, just totally randomly online. And he tweeted, making money and winning LFG, back-to-back division champs. 12 and a half sacks to finish the regular season. Sheesh. Now we lock in for these playoffs. It's hard to overstate Kyle Van Noy's importance to this team, the impact that his veteran savvy brings to the locker room, the young pass rushers, and of course his running mate, Odafe Owe, a fellow outside linebacker, also hits the double-digit sack category. That was the first time in his career he did so. Congrats to number 99. They picked up his 5th-year option this offseason. He's been a late bloomer, development-wise, but I think this all really stems back to Chuck Smith and the Ravens outside linebacker coach that John Harbaugh brought in a couple years ago. He has transformed this group. And by the way, for the first time since Doomerville and Suggs years ago, the Ravens have 2 pass rushers who hit the double-digit sack category, and that is Kyle Van Noy and Odafe Owe. And this is coming off a year, of course, where they led the trifecta across the league. Never been done before. Finishing the year as a defense, first in points allowed, first in sacks, and first in takeaways. This year, they're scheduled to finish top 2 in overall sacks. And I think that's one of those areas that you have to give John Harbaugh credit and tip your cap. Hiring. He is a great hiring manager. He cultivates talent. And I think a non-traditional hire in Chuck Smith, who didn't really have any traditional coaching experience under his belt, that has paid dividends. So much so, look at where the savvy vet found himself going into today in terms of sack leaders league-wide. Trey Hendrickson had a great finish to his season for Cincinnati, and he will be this year's sack king, 17 and a half of them to be exact. Myles Garrett finishes with 14. The Ravens kept him relatively in limbo. But Kyle Van Noy, top 3, 12 and a half. And when you think about how team-friendly his deal is, having signed an extension, that is a win for Eric DeCosta. That is a win for the Ravens defense. And hopefully for Kyle's sake, it'll be a win for him because he's proven that he's still got a lot more miles left on those NFL tires of his.